Good evening. Welcome back to Flashpoint Radio. I'm your host, I suppose, Jay-Z, coming to you. It's little after 5 o'clock here in St. Louis. Wanted to talk about some Ron Paul topics. Everybody likes to talk about Ron Paul. It is the trendy thing to talk about if you like liberty. So we'll get right into the Ron Paul news. Follow me on Twitter as well at flashpointradio.com. Also Facebook /flashpointradio.com. We're going to start with the Wall Street Journal again, the election delegate tracker. I looked at this the other day, and it has the total delegates won by candidates up until this point. Ron Paul has 4, it states. Those 4 came from New Hampshire. I am still wondering why they didn't give him the 6 delegates he won in Iowa. If anyone could check into that, that would be great. I had a friend of mine, David Tocco, who was in Iowa for the caucus, and yeah, he said it was a 3-way tie. They each received the same amount of delegates. That was the decision. But I guess January 3rd, it was announced that Rick Santorum won, and by beating Romney, he gets Ron Paul's delegates, I suppose. So you might want to check that out, Wall Street Journal, misinformation.com. On that same vein, Ron Paul and delegates, this was found on Facebook. I'm going to scan over this real quick. Don't forget about Ron Paul crunching the numbers. Fact, of the 2,286 total Republican delegates, 1,144 are needed to win the nomination. In 5 states, Virginia, Missouri, Ohio, Tennessee, and Illinois, Gingrich and Santorum are not even on the ballot. Those states account for 564 delegates that they cannot win in any way, shape, or form. After South Carolina, only 59 delegates have been allocated to the other 4 candidates. Romney has 39 of those. This is, I believe, before Florida. This means Santorum or Gingrich has to pick up 1,144 delegates from the remaining 1,683. And it says, let's say Ron Paul picks up 20% of the delegates. That's 457 delegates. That would mean that essentially Newt Gingrich or Rick Santorum would have to pick up 90% of the available delegates to get the nomination. So they are de facto, they have mathematically been eliminated from the presidential primary race. So why are they still in the race? If they cannot win, if it is an impossibility for them to win, then why are they still in this race? You might want to spread that around and realize that this is completely false. We're completely being laughed at by the entire establishment because they are allowing us to believe we're making a difference. On the same, Ron Paul's campaign office was burglarized in Norfolk, Virginia. This came Monday. I guess a window was broken, $265 worth of items were taken. Could have just been vandals, who knows. And on this, can you believe it, after winning the CPAC event 2 years in a row, Ron Paul has been eliminated from the lineup of speakers. He apparently has not been invited to speak at CPAC. Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich are both and Rick Santorum. Romney, Newt Gingrich, and Rick Santorum will all address the events. They are keynote speakers, as well as Herman Cain and Rick Perry. Ron Paul has been eliminated from the schedule at CPAC after dominating it. He spoke 3 years in a row, won it 2 years in a row, and they said because Ron Paul fans, Ron Paul supporters booed Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, that they will not be asked to return to the CPAC event, the conservative PAC event out there in Virginia, I believe. No, Washington. So you've got that to look forward to. Have you figured it out yet, Ron Paul supporters? They're not going to let us win the Republican nomination. I don't want to get you down. I don't want to make you stop working because you shouldn't. You should continue to work. But Ron Paul's not a Republican. he's not a Republican in the sense of what the Republican Party is today. The party has changed. Ron Paul has not. He has stayed consistent. The Republican Party has changed. And the party nominates their candidate. It is not the people. It is the Republican National Committee. The Republican Party nominates their presidential candidate. If they don't want Ron Paul, they won't nominate Ron Paul. Now, does that mean you should stop making phone calls, stop going door to door, you should stop doing sine waves? No, it does not. It means you should double down your efforts. I believe, personally, that you should make a veer to the right in a sense, and instead of trying to sell Ron Paul to people, instead of spreading Ron Paul, simply spread liberty, and Ron Paul will follow. You must realize that Ron Paul is not liberty. Ron Paul is an example of someone who believes and follows liberty for all of us to follow. That's it. He's an example. He's a shining light for us to follow. But if we aren't following in his footsteps, if we aren't living a life of liberty like he is, then what are we doing? Then we're working for a candidate. And why work for a candidate? Because one man can't save the world. Ron Paul is not our savior. He cannot prevent the collapse that is coming. He cannot stop the pain that is headed our way. So please, I'm telling you, support Ron Paul, support liberty, continue to spread the message, but do not elevate Ron Paul to something more than he is. He's not a demigod. He should not be a cult of personality. Ron Paul, I believe, is here to make you into Ron Paul. If you're not becoming Ron Paul in your life, if you're not living a life of liberty and spreading it at your work, in your home, at your children's schools, at your churches, if you're not talking about Ron Paul there, then why are you waving signs on an overpass? Because if you can't reach the people in your family and the people you deal with every day of your life, then are you really reaching those that matter to you? Please, speak about liberty to everybody. And they'll find Ron Paul, because Ron Paul is all there is in Congress, in our government basically, that supports liberty. But you teach them about liberty, and the rest will follow. But watch out for the shenanigans, and somebody please tell me how he did not receive any delegates from Iowa. That will be something I would like to do a little bit more research. Perhaps I will. If anybody knows anything about it, please let me know. In the meantime, I appreciate you watching. Thanks for tuning in. I will catch you next time on Flashpoint Radio. I am Jay-Z signing off. God bless and good night.